What's up? Welcome to another episode of Wassup Conversations, a podcast with icons and legends of the video game industry. In this episode, my guest is a brilliant voice actor and a very kind man. He's a film and theater actor and the famous voice of Geralt of Rivia from the Witcher games. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Doug Cockle. In this episode, Doug and I talk about acting, his techniques, and how he works with the creative team behind a game. If you're a game developer, a voice actor, or an artist, you would probably find this episode educational and inspiring. Before getting into it, please consider donating and supporting Wassup Conversations from the link in the description, or simply by introducing the podcast to your friends and colleagues. Wassup Conversations is on YouTube and all the major podcast streaming services. You can learn more about this podcast from newcomers.com. Thank you very much. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Wassup Conversations, Doc. It's so good to have you here. How's everything, sir?
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's springtime. The sun's out. It's a beautiful, glorious day outside. And as you can see, I'm taking full advantage of it in my vocal booth.
Yeah. So I've always been an admirer and a fan of your work, and it got multiplied by like 300 after I worked with you. The way you approach a character and create all these possibilities is a true art. And I think in this conversation, game developers, audio directors, and voice actors are going to learn so much from you. But I guess we have to start with this barrier that you mentioned, this limitation called COVID, and see how it affected your work and what are your downsides and upsides of this situation for you regarding recording a character.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year, hasn't it? It doesn't really affect how I record, how I develop the character, but it's certainly affected the industry, and it's affected the way the whole voice acting industry works. Yeah, it was interesting because I developed my own little home studio about 3.5-4 years ago, and at the time when I developed it, a lot of people I spoke with said, "Oh, don't do that. You know, it's just not a good idea. They'll see you as a home recording person, not a professional actor." And I was like, well, yeah, but you know, people approach me and sometimes like I can't get to the studio, or they can't afford the studio, or you know, whatever it is. So I developed a little teeny studio here. It's this big.
Yeah,
literally. This is my mic here. It's my pop shield, and I'm literally sitting facing a cupboard that I've filled with acoustic foam tiles and stuff, and built in a little desk. So when COVID hit, it was really interesting because suddenly all the studios started sending out emails to people saying, "Hey, do you happen to have a home studio? Because we've got this work we need to record, and we can't get you into the studio here, so maybe we can do it from home." And suddenly it became okay. So it was kind of an interesting situation.
Do you think it's going to change it forever?
I think that the industry will largely go back to the way that it was working before. But I think that, as with so many things in this past year, the possibilities have expanded. So where it used to be frowned upon to work from home, whether you're a voice actor or, you know, an engineer or, you know, whatever it is, now we've all seen, you know, we can do this. It actually works, and the quality isn't affected at all or too badly. You know, it just depends on how things are set up. And with things like Source Connect, you know, you can, you know, record in real time at a remote distance. Yeah, I think it'll make a lot of things more possible.
Yeah. So let's go back far back in your life. Where were you born? How did you start working in this field? And was it something that you always wanted to do?
Wow. Where was I born?
That's important.
In a hospital.
Origin question.
I was born in 1970. Yes, I just turned 50 this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I've made it this far. Woohoo! I was born in 1970 in 29 Palms, California. My dad was a Marine Corps officer, and I was born in the base hospital, 29 Palms Marine Corps Base Hospital. So, and growing up, I took dance classes with my sister just for fun. My sister and I used to put on little recitals for my parents and things like that. I was always a show-off and a bit of a natural performer. I did drama in high school and loved it. I just enjoyed the whole thing. But I never thought of acting as a serious career. It was just a hobby that I did that I really enjoyed doing. I went to university and I got into Virginia Tech as a pre-medicine biology major. I was going to be a doctor. And
thank God.
After my first year, I realized that some of the stuff that I was doing, I didn't really enjoy very much. And I started thinking about things and looking ahead. Someone said, Doug, try to visualize yourself 10 years from now, 20 years from now. What do you see yourself being happy doing? And I had a lot of friends who were in the theater department who were majoring in theater. And just kind of, I went and talked to the head of the theater department. And one thing led to another. And I changed my major and haven't looked back since. And voice acting was not something that was on the agenda at all.
So when was it?
I trained for stage.
When are we talking about? Was it in like late 80s, right?
Yeah, I first went to university in 89 and graduated in 93 with a liberal arts degree, theater arts major with an acting emphasis and an English literature minor. Worked professionally for a few years and then went to graduate school and did a Master of Fine Arts degree in acting at Penn State University, which is it's a program that's been discontinued now, but it was fantastic when it was running. And during all of my training, voice acting wasn't even really discussed or talked about. It wasn't part of the training. The training was almost exclusively for stage, which was absolutely fine because that's what I loved doing. In grad school, we had one series of, I don't know, it was like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that, of time in the university television studio learning how to work on camera. But I never really had any formal training in working on microphone. So when I graduated from Penn State, my wife is English and American, we decided to move to England for a year, and just for a year in 1999. I'm still here. Yeah, it's been a long year. Yeah. But we came over here and when I got my first acting job, I sent out lots of invites to agents and casting directors and people like that. And this one agent I met, who ended up being my agent for 16 years until a few years ago when she retired, she called me up one day and she said, Doug, there's this casting for a video game. They're looking for characters for this video game. Are you interested in going to the casting? I said, yeah, sure. So I went off to this casting. I never even thought about it. I love video games. I always had, but I never thought of acting in them. So I went off to this audition and walked away with having bagged the lead character. So I learned how to work on mic, how to act on mic on the job. I mean, a lot of what I'd already learned was really very transferable. It was just more the technical things about working on mic, which I'm not really thinking about at the moment, by the way. Normally I would not be acting off mic. I'd be in here with the mic.
Yeah.
So, so I got that job. And that game, for those who are real game historian aficionados, I played the character Cal in Independence War 2, Edge of Chaos. I can't remember who the developer was, but that was my first job, lead role in a video game, and it was a learning experience.
So did you know that this is going to be your...
No idea. No, it was just a job. And then, I was doing theater. I was doing, it wasn't too long after that I actually got the role that I ended up playing in Band of Brothers. And I was doing theater and I was doing films and, I was doing a bit of everything.
But again, theater is kind of helpful because you are on stage and you should kind of convey the feeling with your voice. And in video games, voice acting for video games is kind of the same. Don't you agree?
It is, but it's different because in the theater you have to project.
Yeah.
And everything's bigger, more specific. The way that you use your voice is different. But what you're going for, no matter what medium you're working in as an actor, you're always going for what I call the truth, what a lot of actors call the truth. And truth is a very subjective notion. But if you think about truth being defined as what is the truth of this character's existence at this moment in time? What is the truth of the rules of the world that this character lives in? If this character can fly in their world, then that's part of their truth. So it's always about trying to find the truth in the character. And acting for video games, you just do it at a different scale, in a different way. The rules of acting are basically the same. It's really mic technique, technology that you're interacting with, things like that dictate to a certain extent the kinds of adjustments you need to make as an actor.
Yeah. So moving forward, I guess a lot of people want to know when Witcher happened. How did that project came to be?
The Witcher.
The Witcher.
Yes. Well, it was just another job like any other. I think it was 2004. I auditioned, autumn of 2004, and then we recorded it in 2005. And Witcher 1. I was just called in for an audition. I went in. I met a guy named Boris from a company called CD Projekt Red.
How did they found you?
Well, they hired a vocal production studio, the same one, in fact, that I'd done my very first game on.
Who was the genius behind this idea to bring you as Geralt?
Well, it's the way the acting process works is, with games and pretty much anything else, the developer or the producers or the director, whoever it is, goes to a casting director and says, these are the roles that we have, and they define them. They say, this guy has this kind of personality, gruff exterior, really anti-hero, tough guy, however they want to describe them. And then the casting director knows lots of actors. And so what I imagine happened for The Witcher is the brief was sent through to Outsource Media, the vocal production company. And Outsource Media has a database of actors that it works with. And they probably suggested maybe 10, maybe 15 actors who they'd worked with before. And I'd worked with them a lot. So they knew they could trust me. They knew that I would, that I was consistent, that I was pretty fast. I always have a fast, pretty fast word count and line count when I record because I'm a really good sight reader. That's part of it anyways. But so they probably put forward to CD Projekt Red 10 or 15 actors who they thought would be good for Geralt. And then one by one, we were brought into the studio to audition in person. So that's what I did. I went in and I auditioned. No, in London.
Oh, yeah.
So all the English recording was done in London, yeah. But Boris from CD Projekt Red, he's one of the main translators from Polish into English, and he's a writer as well. He came over for the audition, and I just remember being in the studio with him, and he kept saying, right, you get your voice lower, 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 no emotion at all. And, you know, it was a bit of a weird one because as an actor, that's what we deal in, you know, our whole thing is about human emotion. So we just kept trying for different things. I was probably in the booth for about 15 minutes, which is pretty normal for an audition. And eventually what Boris said to me, he said, Doug, think about it like, imagine Clint Eastwood as this character. Clint Eastwood from the Dirty Harry films. Yeah. So, you know, if you can imagine, and this is Geralt, of course, but you know, Dirty Harry's line, "Go ahead, punk. Make my day."
Do you feel lucky?
Yeah, you feel lucky, punk. Go ahead. I bet you're asking yourself, how many shots did he take? Whatever that line is, you know. Yeah. So anyway, so that was kind of what I aimed for. And they liked it, so they went with it.
Wow, that's great. That's great. And come to think about it, saying that less emotion. And this character is so kind of relatable, and you kind of feel emotion still. And that's a very tricky thing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, in the books, he's not described as being emotionless. He's described more as having been deeply affected by the Trial of the Grasses. Oh. And the Trial of the Grasses does strip Witchers of some emotion. But I don't think it's even that. I think it's just that they learn to suppress emotion.
Yeah.
Because they have to. So that's how I define it. That's how I describe it. But I've just been rereading Blood of Elves. And there's a passage in there that actually does talk about Geralt's emotional life. And it talks about how he has one. It's Triss, thinking about Geralt and how she can see and feel his emotions coming through despite the stony exterior. So it was never that Geralt had no emotions whatsoever. It's just that he suppresses them like all, no, not all, but, you know, that's a generality, but like a lot of men do.
Yeah.
But he even more so.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. And also, I always kind of, if the writers gave me even a little teeny bit of rope, of emotional rope to grab onto, I grabbed on. So Geralt is never completely emotionless. He does have emotions. It's just how much he shows at any given time is really the question.
Yeah. So I've noticed that you think very carefully about each character you play, and I think personality you're able to give to these characters is a major factor to making them understandable and multidimensional. What are your methods of approaching a new character and making him alive? I mean, before even start recording.
Well, it's funny with games because often you don't meet the character until the first day of recording.
Yeah. Or,
you know, you've met them in an audition that may have happened 4 months ago. I think the process is just like for any other character as an actor. It's just this, quite often the process becomes compressed because of time, because you get the script the day before. If that, sorry, I've got some builders next door, so we might have some background
it's okay. Yeah.
building noise. If it gets too much, let me know and I'll move into another room or something.
No, it's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the process really does...
I'm going to fix it in post. I hope so.
Oh, okay. The process for acting, it depends on what information you get. If I get the script the day before the first recording, then I read through as much of the script as I can and pick up clues from the script. You know, what do other characters say about my character? What does my character say about themselves? What is the world that they exist within? What is my character's place in that world? And all these things factor into what I then begin to form as a picture of the character as a personality. Sometimes we get a concept art of the world or of the character themselves, and that can inform how I then approach a character. And when I say I'm probably actually talking about most actors. Most actors, this is the kind of process that you go through, not always in the same order, but it depends on, what information you get at what time. Sometimes you get concept art before you see any script. Sometimes you don't see any script at all until you walk into the studio to record. And then all you have to go on is what the character says, which you're reading for the first time as you record, and what the director or the writers have given you as clues to who this character is and how they interact with their world.
Yeah.
So quite often in games, what you're doing is I think as actors, we have, through our experiences, playing different characters in different mediums and other things, we begin to develop a toolbox. Things that work for us, approaches that we know deliver results. And if your process for creating the character gets condensed into a very short period of time, what you do is you fall back on that toolbox immediately and you go, right, what's worked in the past? What can work this time? What do I know about this kind of character that from playing similar characters before? And then as you record, you learn more about the character. And sometimes that means that you make adjustments. And sometimes that means that you have to go in for pickups later on in the recording process to re-record some lines because the meaning of the line has changed, because the development of the character has changed, or just because me as an actor, I didn't do it as good as I could have. And, somebody listens to it and goes, nah, he can do that better. Let's get him in and get a better take on that. But I mean, that's my basic process. I try to take clues from whatever information I have available to me. And then I dip into my toolbox and I start pulling out the things that I think will work for this character. If I have more time, then I'll do research. But all the research that I've done in the past is informing that toolbox. So it's not that I don't do research if I don't have a lot of time. It's just that I rely on research that I've done previously. If I know what I'm going into, if I'm playing a character from a world that already exists in novels or films or whatever it is, then I'll go watch the films. I'll go read the novels. When we started recording Witcher, though, there was nowhere for me to go. The novels hadn't been translated into English. The Polish television series was not yet avail's online. I didn't even know it existed.
And there wasn't any Henry Cavill.
There's that as well. I mean, the Netflix one. No, there was a Polish television series of The Witcher done back in the 90s. I think it was back in the 90s, but I might be wrong about that. So yeah, when Witcher started, all I had to go on was the descriptions of the character and of the world that the writers could give me in the recording studio.
Yeah. So I'm very curious about the accents and tonations you give to the characters. How do you prepare yourself for this?
Well, sometimes it's just obvious. If I know the character is from New York, born and raised from New York, then I'll work on a New York accent. And take that in with me. I mean,
how do you study that? How do you study a completely new accent, for example?
Well, I don't often get asked to do accents that are completely new to me.
Oh, yeah.
And most actors aren't really accent chameleons. There are some who are just amazing at picking up accents. I'm not one of those. Given time, I can approximate most accents. But I'm American, and I can do a lot of American accents, some more easily than others. But if I know I'm going in to play a character who has a regional accent of some kind, then I'll prep it. I've had lots and lots of vocal training, so I understand things about like placement in the mouth, how diphthongs inform the way that a word is pronounced, how different vowels sound in different ways, using the International Phonetic Alphabet to break down a dialect if I have that much time. But there's lots and lots of resources now as well. You can go online and you can type in, I did this one time, I typed in Massachusetts accents, and it came up with something like 6 or 8 different accents. And I picked the one that I was pretty sure was close to what they were looking for. And it just had lots of people talking from that region. And so I just copied.
Oh, yeah.
And I just mimicked what they were doing and, wrote down some phonetic tips and hints and things like that as I was going along. And then when I went to the audition, I was able to do a pretty darn good approximation of that accent. And like in a play, you have at least 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsal where you can work on that accent in rehearsals. So yeah, accents is all about. When I used to teach and students would ask me, how do you get the accent? How should I go about it? I always said, you've got to get the accent into the body. It's not just about your voice. It's about your whole body. And it's also about your way of thinking, because accents, what we do with this thing in front of our face has a lot to do with where we've grown up, how we see our world, how we think other people see us. It's part of the persona that we present to the world. And we have different personas, depending on the situation. All of us do. The way you behave in front of your parents is different from the way that you behave in front of your closest friends. So when you're developing an accent, if you have the time, you want to try to understand someone who has that accent. Where have they come from? And how do they move? How do they hold themselves? It's not just about the sound of the voice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've been doing some voice acting, so I know. What are some of your favorite accents that you do?
Well, I don't really do accents. I mean, I can do accents. I find it challenging on the spot to sometimes do it. I need things to read. Yeah. But
Usually
if I need
to, there's a phrase that you see. It's a magical phrase, and it comes.
Oh well, there is one. I use this. I've never had to do a Scottish accent, but when I was learning how to do a Scottish accent in undergraduate school, I came across this phrase, and it was all about the R's and certain vowel sounds. And I don't remember if I came across it or if I created it for myself, but it's just, if you're going to the fair, my boy, bring me back a turtle or two.
Exactly.
Because it just hits some of those sounds that I was like, well, if I need to remember those sounds, how do I get back to that? But, sometimes I can slip into other accents, it's like, some of them I can just kind of slip into. Now, I don't know exactly what this is. It's kind of sort of a Brooklyn. Yeah, it's a New York. It's kind of a general New York. But if I was talking to somebody from New York, born and bred, they'd probably go, where are you from, man? But for the vast majority of the world, it's good enough.
Yeah. My favorite American accent is Boston accent.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah. So,
or is it Boston?
Yeah. So when you work on a huge game such as Witcher, how do you manage to imagine the situation of the character without seeing it on the screen? Because I imagine a lot of time you're recording without seeing anything in the game. I mean, for example, for a very kind of demanding situation, for like an action scene, or something that has a lot of emotion based on the look of the game or the situation you're in.
Well, again, it's kind of like for everything. You just as an actor, your job is to place yourself as much as possible into the shoes of the character and then live their life as truthfully as possible. There's a definition of acting that I really like. It when I first heard it, it really resonated with me. And it's very simply, acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
Yeah.
So when we've talked about truth and the subjectivity of it and what it means in terms of acting. So if you think about acting as living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, then whatever the situation is, whether it's an intense battle sequence or a moment of pain, emotional pain, or if it's a tender, caring moment, or if it's a sex scene, or whatever it is, essentially what you have to do as an actor is look inside first. Not look inside the character. I mean, that is obviously one of the places to look, but once you've done that and you know a little bit about the character, then you have to look inside yourself and say, what parts of me are like this? How might I, if I were this character, Michael Chekhov, famous actor and acting teacher from Russia, if I were this character, how would I behave? I mean, it's Stanislavski as well. For all you acting geeks out there, this is Stanislavski, Michael Chekhov. It's all kind of the same stuff. The magic if. If I were this character, how would I behave in this situation? Given all the other given circumstances. Okay, we know he's a witcher. We know he's human, but he's mutated. We know that he fights with swords. We know that he puts on a very stoic, stony-faced exterior, so he doesn't get scared easily. We know these things. Well, what part of me is a bit like that? And then you pull that part of you out and give it to the character. And so when acting teachers say to their students, or directors say to their actors, I need more vulnerability. We need more vulnerability from you. What they're saying is, use more of yourself, because that's where you're going to find the truth for this character. I used to use the example, being a room full of students talking about character and talking about acting, and I'd say, right, are any of you the current Queen of England? And inevitably some joker goes, yeah, I'm current Queen of England. Are any of you the current Queen of England? No. Okay. So none of you are the current Queen of England. So can you be the Queen of England? Well, yeah, because we can pretend to be. No, can you be the Queen of England? The answer is no, because her name is Elizabeth and she's sitting over in Windsor Castle. However, you can behave as if you were the Queen of England. And in order to do that, I mean, if you're going to do that, then you need to study Queen Elizabeth and watch how she moves, what she does, how she speaks, and copy those things. But ultimately then, it still has to come out of you. So you're going to find the truth of that character inside yourself. But all the other things, her accent, the way she walks, the way she sits, the way she shakes hands, the way that she speaks, her accent, that's all jewelry. It's like when you're going out for the night, you're gonna go to a club or a bar or something. You're gonna go out for dinner with some friends, and there's a person in that group who you really want to impress. You decide what clothes you're going to wear. You decide whether you're going to wear that particular necklace or a different one. So you're putting on the jewelry that presents the character that you think will do the job of impressing that person. And it's the same thing with an actor. But ultimately, when you're impressing that person, that's all just jewelry. That's all just clothes that you chose. What's going to impress that person really is you.
Yeah, you said something about pouring yourself into the character. Does this ever happen to you that the character kind of respond back and it affect you in your real life?
Well, I have... yeah, and different actors will give you different answers to this. Some actors go really, really deep. And, I'm not that kind of actor. I do go deep. I go deep intellectually, I suppose, but some actors approach acting almost more like therapy. And I just don't think that's terribly healthy. I think that when you play a character, especially if you play a character for a long time, it becomes part of you. Every role I've ever played has become a part of me in some way, shape, or form, because, as I said, I've had to put some part of myself into that character. And then if you're going to truly understand the character and why they do what they do, then you have to take some of that on board into yourself. There have been once or twice that a character has actually affected me on a more personal level, where the emotional life of that character, where the boundary got very slightly blurred. And that's why I say I don't think that's healthy, because there should always be a separation. The actor should be able to walk into the theater, do their warm-ups, get into the zone, play the character, take off the makeup, walk out the stage door, and be done, and have their own life. That's my belief. And I think most actors do that. And many, many, many really good, top actors do exactly that. They understand the character. When they're playing the character, they're the character. When they're no longer playing the character, it's like the character gets, taken out and put up on a shelf, like a hat. And you come back to the character and you take that character off the shelf and you put it back on. I think that's the healthiest way to do this, because otherwise you just go mad.
Yeah. And
there's stories about people like Daniel Day-Lewis famously walked off stage playing Hamlet because I think it was during the scene where he sees the ghost of his dead father, and he actually thought he saw a ghost. And I may be getting this all wrong, but there's a story about Daniel Day-Lewis who was so into the character, so strongly into the character, that he couldn't separate himself from the character. And I always say to students of acting, I always say, look, you've got to be 90% character, but 10% the technician. You're 90% the character doing what the character does. The other 10% is you going, these are my lines. Now I have to pick this prop up. Now I have to get into this sword fight, and I have to remember the choreography and not hurt my partner or myself. Now I have to walk into that light, and I have to hit the spot. I have to find my light, because if I don't, then the audience can't see me. So 10% of you has to be checking in to make sure you're doing the right things at the right time. Otherwise, you just, you do anything.
And do you think that 10% is could possibly help you to know more about yourself? You talked about each character has affected you one way or another. Do you think you ever kind of change your own character in your life based on your understanding of yourself through another character? Like, this character does this in this situation. Oh, I didn't know one could possibly do that. Maybe I'm capable of doing such thing. Do you think it affects your own psyche?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm not sure if it's the character that's doing that, or if it's my...
Sure, yeah, it's your kind of like process, your mind process, like, oh, this can happen. It has nothing to do with the character, but it kind of prepared this situation for you to act in that world, in that situation.
Well, one of the things that actors have to do is they have to ask themselves why a character is doing whatever it is they're doing. We play characters who sometimes do things that we would never do in our real life. We play, Anthony Hopkins played a serial murderer who ate people, Hannibal Lecter. Anthony Hopkins does not eat people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but his process will have had to include, well, so why does this guy do this? Why is this part of who he is? And that journey of trying to understand why a person is what they are, why they do the things that they do, you can't help if you're a sensitive person, and I would say most good actors are very sensitive people. You can't help but learn something about humanity, the good and the bad, and you plug that into yourself. Of course you do, because we're human. And if you're at all curious about this world and about other people and why they do what they do, then you analyze what you see, the behavior that you see, or the behavior that you experience yourself. I catch myself sometimes in moments of crisis, not only responding to the crisis in whatever way, whether I'm crying and weeping and miserable, or whether I'm rising to the occasion and being superhero Doug. I often catch myself just a little, maybe it's that 10% that we were talking about. Maybe it's that 10% that's standing outside of myself, looking in, going, well, that's interesting. Why am I behaving this way?
Yeah.
And then, it's not about necessarily finding the answer. Sometimes it's just about observing what that behavior is, and going, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't think that I would behave that way, or respond that way, or whatever it is. And it's the same thing when you're observing people. I'm a great people watcher. I love to sit in public places and just observe people. And I do this with my wife all the time. We'll be at lunch somewhere or something, and somebody will walk past the table, or I'll see somebody outside the window, and they'll just have a really interesting walk. And I'll say, oh, that person has a really interesting walk. And my wife will go, who? And I'll point, and she'll go, yeah, you're right. That's a really weird walk. And then somewhere in my mind, that gets plugged into the toolbox that we were talking about before. Yeah. Really interesting walk. I wonder why they walk that way.
I think work would be a better place if people would kind of see each other and kind of in their mind thinking about being that person. It would kind of, like studying someone else. I think it would help. Yeah. So
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's part of it is empathy.
Exactly.
Being able to put yourself in the shoes of another person and consider how they might be feeling, what they might be thinking.
Even in the most evil people in the history, or let's talk about movies, a character, there is a place for empathy because that person was not born evil. Yeah.
Yeah, no baby is born evil.
Yeah. You just gotta find
there's
an
argument. Huh?
You just gotta find a way of where things went wrong. And that's the place.
Yeah, sometimes I use Hitler as an example of this sometimes.
Yeah.
Hitler, I think most people today would agree, did evil things. But when he was doing those things, he didn't think of them as evil.
Yeah.
He had what he thought were good reasons for making those choices. So, what becomes really interesting is the why. Why did he think that those were things that needed to be done? How did his personality and his mind develop to the point where the things that he ordered people to do happened? I know there are people out there who don't believe any of it happened at all, but I think history is pretty conclusive on that. Anyways, the point is that he's a good example of someone who he didn't set out to be evil. the concept of evil is something that we place on things from outside. And that's why we love those supervillains, like in The Incredibles, or the films and television shows where someone sets out to be evil, because that's not really how that works. It's kind of an interesting concept. Nobody really truly sets out to be evil. Serial killers don't set out to be evil. They just have a compulsion to do something. It's us on the outside who say that's evil.
Yeah, exactly.
But the person on the inside is just doing what they feel they need to do.
Yeah. So I remember the time when I was in film school, and the part that I was struggling mostly with was interacting with actors, and it was so hard for me to tell them exactly what I wanted. It's such an important and crucial thing that I guess it's often overlooked in the video game development. Tell me about the relationship between the actor and the creative team behind a game. What's the healthiest and most creative way to do it, and how do you prefer to work?
Well, it's different in video games because your relationship with the director, it's different. Like in a play, you have a rehearsal period where you and the director get to know each other, and you begin to bounce off each other in an ideal situation, and you learn how each other work, and you have the time to do that. In video games, like I said, quite often you're very late in the process as an actor. The script's been written, the narrative has been developed, the game has mostly been developed. Sorry, just a bit noisy in my house here. So the actor comes in quite late to the creative process and just gets thrown into the mix. Where the director becomes really important is usually the director has a good oversight of the whole game, what all the different characters do in it, how they're related to the narrative, and they have a good understanding, particularly of the main characters. So if you're playing one of the main characters, the director is your one of your main sources of information for who this person is. And then you've got the writers as well. Sometimes they're involved, and you've got that. In terms of actually recording, the director and actor relationship is very similar to what would happen in a rehearsal studio, except that instead of playing and finding moments that you then later develop, you're finding the moment now because you're recording it now. So the nature of the direction sometimes is a little bit more directorial, is actually the word. Sometimes they'll tell you the inflection that they want. Sometimes they'll tell you what words to emphasize, because we're going for, look, we've got an hour to record 500 words or whatever it is, that's what we've got. We got to get through this. So we need results. If I know as the director what I need to hear from you as the actor, I'm going to give you a line reading. It does happen quite often. The best directors in video games that I've worked with, they very quickly catch on to how you work as an actor, as an individual, and they'll give you prompts. And sometimes they'll just say, can you give this word and that word a lift? So rather than giving you a line reading, they'll give you direction that is quite specific. It's doing the same thing, but it's giving you as the actor the creative freedom to interpret what that means, what that direction means. If that makes sense. Are you getting lots of noise from my end?
No, I can't hear anything.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of noise downstairs at the moment.
It's okay. It makes it more casual.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, it
we're
is.
in your house.
Well, you are. You very definitely are. Look, see, that's my hallway right there. And look, you can't see it, but that's my youngest son's bedroom, 3 feet from me. And look here. That's my oldest son's bedroom. So there you go. I'm very much at home. My wife is downstairs working. There's a builder working on the side of my house. Yeah, welcome to my world.
Awesome.
But anyways, back to the directors. Yeah. I mean, all directors have their own individual way of working with things, and as an actor, you just have to, kind of like the director, sussing out how each actor works. The actor has to go in and kind of go with the flow and work out how this particular director works. And if you've worked with them before, then you kind of know what you're going in for. You know that this director likes to give line readings. They usually give good ones, so I can trust that. This director has a really good way of encouraging different readings without giving line readings, so I can expect that. But if it's a new director, you just kind of have to get to know each other.
Yeah. So sometimes in video games, when you're voicing a character, it's often asked of you to voice other like NPCs, other characters that are not very important to the story or not the main characters. So how do you approach those and kind of making them sound different than an important character? For example, did you voice other characters in Witcher?
No, I didn't voice anything else in Witcher.
Yeah.
And there are good reasons for that, because I think it's fairly rare to find an actor who doesn't sound a little bit like themselves, even if they're doing a different accent or a different character or whatever. I know I'm a bit like that. I often, people can pick me out in games quite often.
Yeah.
I did an NPC. Well, I did 3 NPCs in Horizon Zero Dawn. And I can't remember the area of the world that they're in. But people all the time go, I was just playing Horizon Zero Dawn and up popped Doug Cockle. And, I'm not playing Geralt of Rivia, but it's, there's a certain timbre to my voice that people can sometimes recognize.
Yeah, the texture of your voice doesn't change, but the way you act changes. For example, the recording we had together, I was like, oh, is it gonna sound like exactly like Geralt? And I was listening to you, and I was like, oh my god, this is a totally different character. And I was analyzing it, and I was like, this is a still Doug. It's his voice. But the way he's delivering the lines are kind of different and makes it completely different and believable. Same thing is about acting. Actors are playing always different characters in different movies, but we kind of accept it as a new person. So.
Yeah, well, and I think that character that I played when we worked together, that character gave me scope to explore something different as well. Where Geralt is down here.
Yeah.
I believe that character that I played with you had a slightly British accent.
Yeah.
And I was able to give him more highs and lows in terms of how he speaks. So there was I could give him more range, give him that bit of an accent.
Yeah.
Give him. He was a bit of a tricky customer, isn't he? So I could have a bit of fun with the meaning behind what he's saying. Yeah. So he was fun. He was fun to play. I'm not saying anything else because I don't want to, say too much. But you'll all find out eventually who that is.
Do people point out you in public like, oh yeah, this is Geralt?
No, thank goodness. It's one of the nice things, actually. I mean, voice acting offers actors a wonderful thing, and that's relative anonymity. People know, lots and lots and lots of people know that this guy named Doug Cockle plays Geralt of Rivia in the Witcher video games. But they don't necessarily know what I look like. So they might be a huge fan of the game. They might have listened to podcasts where I was being interviewed. They might even have watched something, an interview like this. But they don't connect that necessarily with the guy standing opposite them in the grocery store.
Yeah, I was talking to one of your friends, and he told me that you were in or an event or something with gamers, and someone came to him and said that he wanted to take a picture with him, and he looked around and saw you and said, "Sir, would you take our pictures?" You took the picture, and he told the guy that, "Do you know who is this guy?" Like, "No, this is Geralt." And he was, "Oh my God, now let's take a picture." Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was at, I'm going to forget his name now.
It was Jay Brighton. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you talked with Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it wasn't him. It was a guy named Mark Drew, I think, who asked me to take the picture. But I took a picture of Mark and Jay and Amelia Tyler, who's another voice actor. And Amelia and Jay, we all knew each other, so they knew that I played Geralt of Rivia, but Mark didn't. We'd only just met. So.
Oh yeah.
But he knew the character. As soon as Jay told him, that's Geralt of Rivia, he went, "Oh no."
He's a good photographer. So, do you have any tips for newcomers?
Newcomers. Newcomers to acting in general, or newcomers to voice acting?
Voice acting. In video games particularly.
Okay. Well, what I can say is that everybody wants to do it now.
Yeah.
When I started out in 1999 in video games, it was a very niche area of performance. It was, and I think people in the wider acting industry didn't think very highly of it. But gradually over the years, it's become more and more a part of the performance culture. It's the opportunities in games to play really wonderful characters, three-dimensional characters in worlds that are open and complex, and characters who have real interesting journeys. That's happening in games. It's been happening for a while now, but it's just getting more and more and more common. So opportunities for actors in games are getting amazing. There are a lot of people. It's kind of an interesting question you ask, because it's quite complicated. I get asked a lot, how do I get into acting for games? And one of the first questions I'll often ask is, well, what experience of acting do you have? Oh, I don't have any experience of acting. Or I used to do plays in high school or something like that. And I'll say, okay, and what experience do you have of voiceovers? And they go, oh, I don't have any experience of voiceovers. I'm just starting out. And it's really interesting how common that is, actually. I think something to understand is if you want to get into voice acting for video games, understand that if you don't have prior experience of acting or of voiceovers or both, you're entering a really competitive market, because there are people who are professional actors who have taken classes, because classes are offered now in acting for video games. So there are people out there who are very experienced, highly trained, know what they're doing, know the business. And if you don't have any of that experience, then you're going to be competing against them. So that puts you at a distinct disadvantage. Add to that actually the voiceover industry is becoming a bit saturated with people wanting to get into voice work. Not just games, but commercials, audiobooks, narrative, all kinds of things. part of the reason for that is because the equipment you can get decent equipment for not too much money now. It used to be that setting up a home studio, you had to make an investment of $3,000 or $4,000 minimum before you even started to put yourself out there. Now, you can purchase the basics: a mic, a USB hub, a
That's all
computer.
you need.
You don't need
Just
a lot.
The mic. Yeah.
I mean, the mic is the key thing, and you can
Yeah.
get a decent mic for, I mean, a good mic you'd want to spend around $100,
Yeah.
But I'm using dollars. I live in the UK. I'm actually thinking £100, so it's probably more like $150. But like, there's the Rode NT1
Yeah.
is a really great beginner's mic. It's not expensive. You can get a Rode NT1 package with a mic stand, the XLR cable, pop shield and everything for just over £100 here in the UK. And then if you add to that, get a Focusrite Scarlett or an Audience ID hub for around £60 to £100. I might have gone up. I have an Audience ID 14 USB hub, and that I think cost me £114 about 3.5 years ago. So for under £250, about $400, you can get yourself set up with all the things you need, and then you just have to find yourself a really quiet space in your house, and get yourself some demo reels made and put yourself out there. So people are able to set themselves up as voiceover artists really cheaply now. So people have gone, wow, I love this stuff. I love games. I love, voice acting. I've dabbled in it. I'm going to buy me some equipment and put myself out there. So lots of people are doing that.
Exactly. And you mentioned that they know nothing about voice acting, and it shows. Throughout my sessions, it's kind of like some of they think that, okay, give me some lines and I read it like a machine, right? But what I expect from them is like all right, listen, I have this script. I don't know how it's going to turn out. You tell me about this character. You tell me how to say these lines. It's not me. And with great voice actors like you, when you work with them, immediately they give you like multiple options, like this, that, and you just, so many options. Let's go with 2 and done. But I've worked with amateur voice actors, and it completely shows. Not only that they haven't studied the craft, but they're not familiar with video games, that how it's gonna turn out in a game.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of amateur voiceover actors. To be honest, I don't know if I know any. I mean, truly know them. People who I go down to the pub with or something like that. I interact mostly with professional voiceover actors, but I have had interactions with a lot of people who want to get into games. And I totally understand it. I get it. And there are people who just have a natural talent, and then they learn on the job, and they're excellent. Someone who comes straight to mind is Troy Baker. Troy Baker was a musician, and he met some people, and I don't remember the story. He tells it in an interview somewhere, but basically, by chance, he met some people who were making a game. They thought he might be good as this particular character. He went into the studio. He did it. He liked it. He enjoyed it. Found that he was good at it. People kept calling him in to do things, and he learned on the job. And he's a fantastic voice actor. But he didn't have any real actor training at all. He just has raw, natural talent. And he was a little bit fortunate, and he works at it. So, it can be done. So you don't have to. I trained for 7 years as an actor, formally trained as an actor for 7 years. So I've got all that behind me. But that doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have that experience can't do it. It just means that, you have to. I talked about a toolbox, and you can fill your toolbox in different ways. I filled a lot of my toolbox through training. And then it's about experience. Every role I play, I'm adding to my toolbox. So I always say to people who don't have much experience or any experience, I say, go get some experience. Go join an amateur dramatic society and play the small roles, and then maybe play a larger role. Do some acting. Getting the experience, that's a form of training. Doing the work is a form of training as well. But, just understand that, if you're starting from absolute zero, you got a big hill to climb.
Yeah.
So any advantage you can give yourself is a good thing.
Do you teach, Cockle?
I do. I don't teach at the moment. I have taught. I was the course leader for the BA Honors Acting university degree at Arts University Bournemouth for 13 years until 2017. And then I also, for a brief stint, for a brief time, I was the program coordinator for the Acting for Film course at University of Chichester. So I've done a lot of teaching. I also taught when I was in grad school. I was I forget what they call this. But basically I was a master's degree student, and I taught undergraduate non-majors for 3 years. So I've done a lot of teaching of acting. I haven't done any real, no, I have. Yeah, I have. I've taught voiceover acting. I've not taught games acting. But I have taught acting on mic.
Yeah. Yeah, word needed. So, who are some of your favorite voice actors?
Oh. Wow. Sorry, I've got a ticker tape list going in my head. It's like, who do I talk about? Well, I've mentioned Troy Baker. I really admire that guy.
He was on the show too, by the way.
Was he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. He I like Troy Baker a lot. I think he's got a fantastic voice. He knows how to use it. I like what he does with his characters. I like him as a person. The interviews I've seen him do and my own personal interactions with him, he just seems like a really grounded, cool guy.
Exactly.
I like Troy a lot. I've had some encounters with Nolan North as well, and I've enjoyed him. I like his work as well. I'm trying to remember names now. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, this guy's cool anyways, but Christopher Judge as
oh my God, yeah.
Kratos in God of War is fantastic. But what's her name? She played Freya in God of War. I'm trying to remember her name. And it's just escaping me, but she was fabulous. I thought she put in a fantastic performance for that. And I think she was nominated for a BAFTA for that performance. I don't think she didn't win, but she was nominated. She was really good. Who else? Ashley Birch. I really like Ashley Birch. She's got some good stuff. Yeah, I mean, the list could go on and on and on.
So the voice actor for Freya was Danielle Bisotti. Is that right? The pronunciation?
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Freya in God of War. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, what are some of your favorite games?
Oh. Well, The Witcher is up there, top of my list, I think.
Have you played Cyberpunk, by the way?
I haven't yet, no.
It's a masterpiece. I've been
Yeah,
playing
I'm
it for
looking forward
months.
to playing it eventually. Part of the reason is I wanted to, bless them, CD Projekt. I love them so much. And I felt really bad for them when Cyberpunk came out and there was all that stuff about bugs and, I can't imagine how disappointed they must have been in some of the public reaction to the game, because I saw loads of really good stuff. But on the back of that, one, I just don't have the time to give it at the moment. I haven't been able to play any games for a while now because I've just been so busy with various things. But also I decided I'd kind of wait. I've got a PS4. So I thought, I'm just going to wait it out until CD Projekt fixes everything that they want to fix, and then I'll have a smoother experience, I suppose. So yeah, I'm waiting on that one. But favorite game of all time is a game called What Remains of Edith Finch.
Oh my God, that's an awesome game.
Yeah, I love it. It's not even a game, really. I mean, it is a game because you have to make choices and stuff, but it's more like a graphic novel that you interact with. I just absolutely loved it. The thing is, I've played it 3 times now. I keep going back to it because it's just such a beautiful thing. You can play it in a day.
Yeah.
My first playthrough was, I think, 7.5 hours in one day. My second playthrough, I think, was 5.5 hours, and my third playthrough was about 4.5. But that was partly because I knew what was coming, and I was moving through, trying to explore something a little bit different, maybe. But I just thought, my first time through, it took me until, I think it took me, the sequence where the character chases the bird through the trees.
Yeah, I know.
You remember that?
Yeah. Trees, yeah.
I'm trying not to give too much away there. But I think it was around that point in the game that I started to realize, oh, that's what this game is doing. Again, I don't want to give too much away because it was part of the joy of playing it that I realized, oh, this is what's happening. And then I was like, this ride has just taken on a whole new, this is a whole new experience. So yeah, for anybody who's looking for a good game to play.
And that game, I believe, is kind of one of those games that you can say, all right, this is a video game and this is movies. And that interactivity with that story is something very unique to the world of video games that you can't get in books or movies.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I described it once as a little bit like Myst. Do you remember Myst?
Yeah, I haven't played it, but I know.
Yeah, well, anybody out there who's played Myst or Myst 2 or 3 or whatever they're on now, it's a little bit like that, but not. If you see what I mean. Yeah, I love What Remains of Edith Finch. It's one of my favorites. Night in the Woods was a good one.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
I haven't played that yet.
But my thing, I love the RPGs. I love the open world RPGs. So I really enjoyed God of War. I haven't finished it. I don't remember where in the game I actually am. I might have to start it over again. But I loved playing God of War. Red Dead Redemption 2. Really enjoyed that. Again, a game I haven't finished.
Man, Red Dead has some great voice acting.
Yeah. Oh, and Roger Clark, who plays Arthur Morgan. Yeah, he's going to be at Comic-Con Scotland when I go as well. We're going to be there together. Not together, not like as a couple or something like that, but we're going to be there at the same time. I'm really excited because I admire his work, and he's a
very down-to-earth guy too.
Yeah, through a friend, he's seems to be an admirer of my works. So I think the two of us are going to have to get together for a coffee or a beer or something. Yeah.
So, tell me about your favorite movies and favorite actors.
Oh, favorite movies. I think I realized recently that I'm actually a big fan of movies from the 80s, I suppose. I mean, I love the movies anyways. I was a teenager in the 80s, so
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. You
a
have
lot of those films, they had a huge impact on me. But going back to the 70s as well, movies like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, E.T., The Breakfast Club, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, fantastic film, that one. All kinds of things. Lots and lots of good movies. But one of the things I like about movies from earlier decades is that they take more time in the storytelling. Movies today, a lot of them, things happen so quickly. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a real joy in watching a story unfold more slowly.
Do you think it has something to do with the social network? I mean, you open up your cell phone, there's YouTube with billions of videos, there's Instagram with full of 1-minute videos, and you have to watch them all, and you don't have time to spend like on one video for like an hour, and that is creating this habit in people to see things go fast and go right into the point. And yeah, exactly, that character building, that spending time. The last night I was watching again Apocalypse Now, the final cut. And I was impressed how much time this movie is giving to each character. And by the end of the journey, you kind of like, oh man, I wasn't there. And I read something from Coppola that said, my movie is not about Vietnam, it is Vietnam. So yeah, do you think it has something to do with the way we're consuming media?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That technology has changed how we interact so much. We're living in an always on society. We're always available. Our mobile phones are always on, and they sit next to our beds, and people are messaging us, and some of us mute our things at night and some of us don't. We live on our phones so much, and on our tablets and on our laptops and everything else. It's, and technology moves fast. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's that. I've certainly noticed for myself that when I've directed plays, and certainly when I act in things, I think that my process is quicker now than it would have been 25 years ago. But then again, 25 years ago, I didn't have quite as full a toolbox either. But yeah, if you look at films now, even the films that are considered slow burn, that where the story is told in a bit slower, they're faster than they would have been 15, 20 years ago. Sometimes to their detriment, I think. Because we don't have the opportunity to become quite as invested in the characters and their needs and their fears. Take, for example, the Taken films. Fantastic films. I really enjoy them. Or the Bourne films, the Jason Bourne films. Or more recently, Keanu Reeves plays him.
John Wick.
Yeah, that's the one. Which is a really great example. We don't really, the depth of what we know about them is it's not deep, it's shallow. And what we see, we witness character through action more than thought. I'm not quite sure what I'm saying there. I kind of have unformed thoughts about all of this, but it's instant gratification. and often we, in films today, our gratification isn't earned over time and investment in an investment of our attention.
Exactly.
The film just kind of washes over us.
And it's not about the time we have or we're putting into watching it, because mostly we see TV series, miniseries are getting more and more attention than before. But I was watching this Falcon and Winter Soldier,
right?
A Marvel TV series, a 6 episode. I don't remember, and I was like, all right, let's see a Marvel story in a extended way. How is this gonna be? Is this gonna be more deeper or not? But surprisingly, it's the same formula. Each episode is going so fast, not a lot of attention to making characters. But again, I remember back in like when Batman Begins came out, and that film took like half an hour to introduce or more Bruce Wayne before introducing Batman, and by the end of the act of Bruce Wayne, you knew why he's becoming Batman. And that's not again about the time we have, about the attention that we can handle. Like if it goes more than 3 minutes of talking about a character or making it something as slow, audience is going to lose their attention. And I get that in video games mostly. I mean, when I watch a movie, I'm fully focused and invested. But when I play games, I really don't like to see a lot of dialogues or so. So when it goes more than like a minute, I lose the conversation. What is this?
Yeah, you want to play. Yeah,
you
didn't sign up for this video game to watch cinematics. You signed up for the gameplay. Yeah, exactly. I get that. I think it's changing, and it'll continue to change as well. And technology is advancing, and what video games can do now is 100 times what they could do 15 years ago. And more, 500 times. Imagine 10 years from now how VR and AR and AI is going to change how we play games.
Yeah.
And I have no idea exactly what's going to happen, but I know it's going to change, and it's some of it's not going to be good. We're already seeing some of that happening now. Changes that are, raising serious ethical and social and business questions. But a lot of it will be good,
Exactly. So, favorite actors?
Again, the list is long. Well, I've always loved Harrison Ford, to be honest. I just like his approach. Meryl Streep. Yeah. Claire Danes. I think I have a bit of a crush on Claire Danes, actually. Who else? Oh, now her name's escaping me again. She played, she was in that film about Legally Blonde. I'm forgetting her name. I know exactly who she is, but I love her work. She's fantastic.
Reese Witherspoon?
Reese Witherspoon, thank you. Yes. You're Googling things, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're being smart about it. Yeah, I'm not Googling things. Reese Witherspoon. I love Reese Witherspoon. Those are just a few examples of people who I like and admire for different reasons, for all different reasons, but mostly because I recognize that, the skill and talent that they bring to the screen. I mean, George Clooney is another person I really like to watch. But I also admire his very real skill on camera. He's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, a few of my favorites.
Yeah. How about Henry Cavill?
I like Henry. Yeah, Henry's good. And I really like what he's done with Geralt in the Netflix series. I think he's nailed it. You know, I mean, I knew he was a good actor. I haven't always liked everything that he's done, but that I could say that of other people I like as well. But he's a good actor, always has been. And I didn't know what to expect, but you know, when people asked me after he was announced, after it was announced that he was going to play Geralt of Rivia, you know, I was like, look, you know, he's a good actor. He's going to make it his own. Let's wait and see what he does. You know, I'm not going to prejudge it because that's pointless. Yeah, he brought it, man. I think he's great in the role.
Yeah, I love him. So, thank you so much, Doug. You're a professional actor, a passionate collaborator, and above all, a very kind and generous man. And it was an absolute honor and an education for me to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you. And Hamadreza, can I just say it's been a pleasure talking with you as well. And
Thank you.
I look forward to the possibility of working with you or talking with you again in the future.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, man, stay safe out there.
Yeah, you too. So have a great day.